Great to see you. Thank you for your leadership for these weekly meetings. I look forward to our opportunity to touch base with each other in these interesting times. So we are going to have a devotional time together. I'm going to ask you this question, and I'll as a part of our devotion, and I'll put it out there now, so that you can reflect on it as we go through the devotion, and then perhaps share that. But how have you? And let's focus on today. Where have you found strength in God today, on this particular day? How has God provided you with just enough for today on this particular day? So I'm going to begin. The title of this devotion could be Asher's, or People of Asher. In Deuteronomy 33, Moses, just before his death, is going through and blessing each of the tribes of Israel, right? And they're about to enter the promised land, but he will not be joining them. He'll die before he has that opportunity. But it's been a long, tough journey for Moses and for the people of God. And as they come to the end, he knows his time has ended, and so he blesses each tribe. And here from Deuteronomy 33 is the blessing for the tribe of Asher. And of Asher, Moses said, "Most blessed of sons be Asher. May he be the favorite of his brothers, and may he dip his foot in oil. Your bars are iron and bronze, and as your days go, so is your strength." I want to focus on that last half of a verse, which is half of verse 25. As your days go, so is your strength. When Moses, after enduring all the hardship that he endured in his life, got to thinking about what was a grand and great blessing that he could give to one of the most favored sons of Israel, the grandest and greatest blessing that he could think of also included that there would be enough strength for each day. As your days go, so is your strength. And I want to share this excerpt from, I believe I've shared from this particular devotional before. This is one that was written by various leaders during World War II. It's called Strength for Service. And I picked it up on my first deployment and found great comfort in it many times. And I think today's is especially relevant for how we are living through a time right now. And of course, the verse is the same verse from Deuteronomy 33:25. I'll read it in the King James Version now. Thy shoes shall be iron and brass, and as thy days, so shall thy strength be. The cross is not greater than his grace. The storms cannot hide his blessed face. The writer of this quotes a hymn. Here in our text is God's just adjustment. There will never be too much strength, nor will there ever be too little. It's tailor-made help. It fits the individual need at the moment of the greatest need. It is help held in reserve. I cannot draw on it ahead of time. It will be given only as I need it. It is apportioned, fitting, and sufficient. As the need arises, so comes the help. The burden cannot be put on me suddenly and unawares. God's grace will fill my heart before the burden falls upon my shoulders. I have no way of knowing or forecasting the trouble or the affliction. I do not know what the day will bring, but I do know that with the burden of the day will come God's strength. Before the sorrow of tomorrow can strike me, it must pass God. God stands before my life as a sentinel. I cannot, in a certain sense, prepare myself for the morrow. God must prepare me for it. I wait for the days to come. I know that with their burden will come the needed strength. With their perplexity will be provided the needed guidance. With their sorrow will be given the needed comfort. The day will not be too long, the path too steep or difficult, or the burden too heavy. As thy days, so shall thy strength be. So, how about you? Where did you find strength in God today? And you can respond in the chat or unmute yourself and speak. Where have you found strength in God on this day? Someone, Carla says, the calm after the storm. It was quite a storm last night, and it was a nice, calm day, relatively speaking. The vastness of nature, thank you. Just before this meeting, my wife and I made it out in the boat and a quick dip in the lake for refreshment, and I would say that provided me with some strength for the remainder of this day. The sun will rise each day. Where else? Where have you found strength in God? Morning prayer. Thank you. Well, let us pray. Not have anyone coveting my fancy glasses now. Dear God, let us gratefully keep in mind your promise of strength in accordance with our needs. May we meet each day's trials with high courage and confidence, born of unquestioning faith. Amen. Well, I think this particular message is especially relevant in this time. I know there are days when I awaken with a great sense of urgency in a good way, urgency and hope for the day to come. And there are some days that I awaken with just a heaviness. And I think you probably have experienced that in these days as well. And there's certainly plenty of heavy things weighing on us from this ongoing pandemic, from which we daily pray for deliverance. And then the pandemic that has been with us for over 400 years in this nation, that is old and has been with us for this long and is deeply rooted in our DNA as a nation, sadly, but which is only now perhaps coming into greater focus and awareness on the part of the wider population, the white majority, which is the scourge of racism that was brought once again right before us with the killing of George Floyd on Memorial Day. So last week I was a little late to join you because we had a time of prayer and a vigil with Concordia, with leaders from Concordia. And I was grateful to have had that opportunity, and we did post that, so I hope you had an opportunity to watch it. So can you, Chris, what's next on our agenda?
Hello, everyone. One thing I would like you all to do when you get a chance is to say your name and what congregation that you serve as council president, or if you're a parish president. I'm kind of trying to keep track of those who are coming, so I can reach out to the people who aren't getting the information to make sure that the important information gets out. So if you can, at some point this evening, share your name and congregation in the chat window. I can save that and kind of mark it on my little chart, so I know who I need to do follow-up for. The next thing that we have on our agenda is Bishop Bill is going to share the COVID-19 report from the state. Do you have that, Bishop?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I do. I just wanted to share this. We've been articulating these three values: facts, faith, and love. We want to be guided by the facts as they're given to us and from by the best science possible. Try as much as divorced from sentiment and politics, and probably not from economics. That's a reality that we're living into, but as much as possible from politics and pure sentiment. And so I wanted to share the weekly report, and see if I can find it. Here it is. So this is the weekly Minnesota report. It's out of date because it came out on the 3rd, and so there'll be another coming out in a few days. But you'll remember that the original guidance from the White House around reopening and regathering in person, which, by the way, is still the guidance listed on the CDC and the White House's web pages for the plan for reopening America, consists of 3 phases, in which the first phase, I believe it is the guidance that is guided by the best public health opinion that's most divorced from political pressures, because it came earliest. And in that guidance, which again is still the official guidance for the CDC and the White House, there are 3 phases, and the first phase begins after 14 days, consecutive days of declines in cases of COVID-19. So here on page 5 in Minnesota, you see the daily case numbers going all the way back to the very first case on the 5th of March through, on the right-hand side, the 3rd of June. And what you see is that back on the 27th of May, we did start to see this decline. And we needn't be too concerned about these little jumps, because those are usually Mondays. Weekends are low case reporting. Friday, Saturday, Sundays, you see a lot of these 2 and 3. This was a 3-day weekend here. And so you see these 2-day bumps with occasional 3 days in there because of holidays. There's just low reporting on Saturday, Sundays, and holidays. But otherwise, so you see the general trend up and then coming down now. And so this appears to show that there have been a decline in case for the first time since the pandemic began in Minnesota for possibly 10 days. So we won't know whether we get to the 14. Well, we could determine if we went and looked at each of the daily reports since the 3rd. So from this report, we would, if you're working as a smart team, trying to figure out what's the safest way for us to move forward, I think you could, if I were sitting on one of those teams, I'd say it looks like we may be entering phase 1 soon, which is the phase at which it's safe for 10 to gather. Now, I realize we've moved past that in a lot of ways in some congregations. Some of you have begun to gather for quite some time with 10. But I just want to remind us of the actual guidelines that have been given by the Minnesota Department of Health and by the original guidance, I mean by the CDC, which I think is sound guidance. And it's the guidance that, it's what our guidance as a synod is based upon. And then there's another page I wanted to show you. I think it's page 12. So here's another page that I think is important, that would be of interest to me, which is the ways in which the cases, how they were transmitted. And you'll notice that 51% of the known transmission, so more than half, came from community spread, not healthcare, not travel, not congregate living. And then there's another 17% that's unknown, which might be community spread.
Nancy Muffelman, President.
Hi, Nancy. If you want, you can also just type it into the chat area. So I wanted to share that as a way of illustrating how I think one way that we can be guided by facts, science, the way we can use some of the reports that are being given to us to understand, what is the risk and where are we at as this pandemic unfolds. I'm going to share one other document if I can quick find it here. Okay, coming back to you. So I would like to also share, we've been talking about forming health teams, smart teams. And so on the Minnesota Department of Health website, there's this link. If you go there and just along the side, search on, look for local health departments. This will give you all the contact information for every county for your local public health officials. And some counties have more robust, obviously based on size, are a little more robust than others, but everyone has some kind of a public health official that works with the Minnesota Department of Health. So that's what I wanted to share. Are there questions, thoughts, comments? Okay, Chris.
I'll put a link to that page that Bishop Bill just showed on his screen with the county contacts on our COVID-19 webpage, so you can easily find that. So on Friday evening, in Governor Walz's fashion, he announced a change of guidance for worship. So up until, well, actually it starts on the 10th is the official change. I'm gonna share, I wanna make sure I have the right screen up. Oh no, I closed that one. Never mind. I will share this one. So it looks a lot similar to the document that was just up, but the first page is changed the most. They took out a lot of guidance, and it says hosting groups over 10 people in worship, funeral homes, and weddings and funerals and planned services like worship rituals, prayer meetings, and scripture studies. It is now for indoor settings. Occupancy, it must not exceed 50% of total occupancy according to the fire code for the room, with a maximum of 250 people in a single self-contained space. In outdoor settings, gatherings must not exceed 250 people. And so most of the other pages stayed the same. We had that document up that was the 21 questions on to ask to prepare your congregation. And I only had to switch one little number because they added a guidance on safely using prayer rugs. And so I had to just make one little change. So the overall guidance and the questions are still the same. Cleaning is still the same. All of that guidance is still the same. But one thing I wanted to share with you is I have found in my digging, there are some things in the recreational entertainment venues that can help churches get ready in some other areas. And so we will get to that because it's more help for outdoor seating situations. So yeah, before we dig into the outdoor worship, Bishop Bill is going to share a new document that was put out recently called Resuming Care-Filled Worship and Sacramental Life during the pandemic, and it's an ecumenical resource.
Okay, let me find it. No, that's not it. So this is a beautiful document that was prepared by, it's the result of the ecumenical consultation, all of our full communion partners who came together. It's very similar in terms of the content of the guidance, it's very similar to the guidance that we provided as a synod and as a churchwide organization. But I think it helps to better answer the question why. Why would we proceed in this fashion? It has rich theological grounding that I think is useful, and then I believe it's probably an easier document to navigate just because of the look and feel, and might be a more user-friendly document for you to use as a smart team. As you begin to think about, once again, this uses the language of levels, but it's the same thing as the phases. And so it is based on that phased plan of declining cases of COVID-19, like the rest of our guidance is. And it has some really, I think, helpful guidance, like the others do, but perhaps some that you might find just easier to access. On sacramental life in the congregation, has a nice checklist here. So none of it is in conflict with anything we provided. It's not necessarily new. I just think it's a well done document, and I wanted to pass it along to you, make you aware of it. And we will be adding this to our website. And it's entitled, get back up there so you can remember the title. Resuming Careful Worship and Sacramental Life During a Pandemic. And one of the things there's a little section in here on beauty, on the necessity of having beauty in worship, and the ways that we do that have historically done that, have involved really necessitated in-person gathering and oftentimes close proximity, but has some suggestions for some ways to offer an offering of beauty in the context of worship that are safer. So I thought that was a nice little piece. But I like this and I think it might be useful for some of you. Some of you may have already found resources, and I'm not suggesting that you pile on additional ones. That's not necessary. But if you're just getting started with your care team, this you might find you'll have some choices as to what are we going to use as our primary guide. So I'll stop sharing and just ask if there's any questions.
This is Laura Rude from Zion and Thief River, and I have to just say thank you. It's so nice to have a place to go to, source all this stuff, and have faith that it's trustworthy. I do not have all the time in the world to go digging for this. So Chris, thank you. Thank you. I cannot tell you how much, I appreciate that. And I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of the presidents on the call. So this is so helpful. So.
Well, good. I'm glad. That is our goal, is to be helpful, because I totally get that you are all way underpaid for the jobs that you have to do as council presidents right now. It's you don't need the additional work of having to do all the research. So that's what we're doing as a staff. Chris doing most of that, but we're all pitching in as well. So I'm glad. I hope that it is helpful.
This is Linda Burke from First Lutheran in Baudette.
Yep.
How do we present this stuff to our councils when we have council meetings?
That's a good question.
There's a lot of people in the congregation that are anxious to get back to some kind of worship other than online.
Right.
All the other churches in the area are having services.
Yeah, and I understand that there's a lot of pressure on some of you. We're going to actually ask some poll questions here pretty soon around that. So what ways have you found as leaders to have conversations with the rest of your council and with your congregation? We have,
This stuff that we have on the webpage, is that printable to share? Although, how do you do
Yes.
that?
well, you can print it out, or I would encourage you to find those resources that seem to most useful and relevant to you, and you could forward those to the council. I think there's a one-page, 21 questions, frequently asked questions that might be a good starting place. I believe that there will be that it's a fairly comprehensive document. I think you will need to lay that alongside of resources we're providing for how to do this in a smart way. But this at least gives you sort of a frequently asked question checklist for understanding what's the scope of the work we have to do, and are we making decisions about whether we feel equipped to do it, and how we're going to move forward. So look, I get that you are getting lots of pressure and things are opening quickly in spite of the fact that there's no change in the risk with COVID-19. My take has not changed, which is that, excuse me, I'm just going to clear my throat. My pastoral guidance on this is still unchanged, which is that I believe it's faithful for us to continue to find ways to serve each other and to share God's word and to worship in creative ways, mostly remotely like this, until such time as it's safe for most of us, for everyone to gather. I realize not everyone agrees with that, or not everyone will necessarily even follow that. And so alongside of that, we're also providing guidance for ways that you can do this safely. So really, we're giving you both messages. One message is, it's actually the same as the Minnesota Department of Health's guidance. Every time you get new guidance from the Minnesota Department of Health, it starts with probably the first 3 questions are, you really should find another way to do this. You really should continue to shelter in place. You really, people who are at risk should stay home, and you should look at other ways of possibly doing this if you can. But if you're going to move forward, here are some safe ways to do that. That's basically what we're doing too. We're saying we believe that it's in the spirit of who we are as God's people to move forward together as God's people, to wait until there's the time when it's safe. It's truly safe for us to be together and we're not putting our neighbor at risk. And we believe that what's different between us and the rest of the economy and the community is that we understand that our businesses simply can't continue to wait because they won't survive. But our churches maybe can. Many of them are thriving and finding ways to thrive in the midst of this time. And so that continues to be our guidance, that we would wait, but also we want to provide resources in case your congregation decides we can do this safely, and we have the resources to do it safely. So someone just suggested sharing that video. I've got a couple of videos around returning to in-person worship that you may find useful, and Chris can help you find those. That might be the easiest way, is to just share a video.
Okay.
So I'm happy to respond to any questions or concerns around that.
In the chat, some people have also said that they give links to the council members, encourage them to watch these videos so they can kind of hear it from the horse's mouth. That their SMART team is working on this. The first question, or one of the first questions on our 21 question sheet is, do you have a SMART team? And so working on that. Yeah.
I just talked to a congregational president today, way up on the border. They've just formed a SMART team. They are looking at continuing with the way they're doing worship until the end of June. And the SMART team's going to do some research during that time They're going to reevaluate at the end of June and see whether they feel comfortable making a plan to slowly begin returning to some kind of in-person worship. And that SMART team is comprised of some people from the medical field from the community and some people that have some wherewithal and knowledge around public health. I think that's a responsible way to move forward. It won't surprise me if in June they say, we're just going to keep doing this for a little longer and we're going to keep monitoring it until it looks safe. Or that maybe something will change. Maybe we'll continue to see that trend line decline down and it'll feel safe for everyone except those who are in high risk categories to gather. Then you'll have some decisions to make as a community. And then, you know, one of the probably second questions on that 21 questions, frequently asked questions, is what about your minister or rostered leader? Are they in a high risk category? And if so, how do you navigate that? Questions?
Well, this is Laura from Zion and Thief River again. Just one of the things that I find most challenging is how fluid the situation is and how quickly it changes.
Right.
You know,
Me too.
We had our council meeting last Thursday, and we were lockstep with each other, thank heavens, in we're not going to be opening. But then Friday, the governor comes out with, 50% capacity, and I just wanted to bang my head because.
Yeah.
And then it didn't take long before a couple phone calls and texts and are we opening? And it's like, no. But I think that's the challenging part of this. But, we've hopefully done a good job of communicating out to our congregation, whether it's on our website or over the broadcast announcements that, our council meets every 2 weeks now because we don't have board meetings. We're meeting every 2 weeks. And, the last announcement was we will review our plan in 2 weeks and then prepare potentially opening for July. But we will reassess that at our first meeting in July. So just level setting everything. And, so there's not a false hope. You give them hope, but not a false hope that, whether the governor says, go for it, and it's like, no, we still need to love each other and make sure we're taking care of each other. And for Pennington County, anyway, our cases are on the rise. So it doesn't make any sense for our area. Also the age of our congregation and the stubbornness of some of our parishioners.
Yeah.
They wouldn't stay home if you told them. So, we just got to take care of each other.
Pastor Brad Scogan, thank you for that, Laura. Pastor Brad Scogan wrote a beautiful essay on the Anawim, which is the Hebrew for the population who require special care, require protection, and about a particular individual in his congregation who he remembered from years ago they were just going to be there if the doors were open, and who would be very much at risk if they were to show up. Those are the kind of folks that we want to be thinking about. I think that's who we are as God's people. We order our lives in such a way as to tend to the lost sheep, right? The one that's most vulnerable. And that's a different way of ordering than the way society at large, which is the loudest voice or the greatest majority or the one with the most power or the most influence. What's next, Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to share with you the Minnesota Stay Safe Plan. So this is on the Department of Health. I pretty much live on this website. And it goes through all things. It has on here the phases that the governor has issued. So, stay at home and then the May 18th to June 1st, the June 1st up, and then starting on the 10th, which is Wednesday, is this new shift of things. So right here, this column. So social settings, indoor settings. One thing that I wanted, I was digging deep, trying to find good resources on outdoor worship today, because I had some people asking me questions on that. And there are not really good resources for outdoor worship. So I thought, I go to a lot of music festivals and concerts, outdoor music. And so I went to that, indoor events and entertainment, and then this outdoor events and entertainment. So here, 6 feet of social distance gatherings must not exceed 250 people, see guidance. And then strongly recommend, masks are strongly recommended. And that part was said on our worship. And down here, we do have places of worship. Here, like I said before, it's a 6 feet of social distance, maximum 50% in a single contained space, and then masks are strongly recommended. I thought it was kind of curious that worship, that we could be at 50% and everything else was at, for all the entertainment things, we're at 25%. I thought that was kind of a little bit of an interesting thing. Gyms are starting to open at 25%, restaurants and personal services like salons and all of those things are up to 50% now. But with our, with what I was sharing before, or what I was going to share with before, that I couldn't find good indoor, outdoor information. Here on, this is for the recreational entertainment venues. So on page 2, there is number 8. Oh, I also got questions today about eating together. They had taken all of the eating other than the communion stuff out of the worship guidance that I showed you earlier. But here in the recreation entertainment, it said food should not be shared communally. I had the darndest time trying to find healthy practices of eating. And I just can't imagine trying to eat at like a thing for a fellowship after a funeral or a memorial service and trying to like have my mask on and like move it to eat a piece of bar and then put it back up. And we know from science that it's the talking and prolonged droplets, aerosols is what gets people. So in this document from the Minnesota Department of Health, it says food should not be shared communally. And then down here on page 6, right here, the 4th one, if venues occur outdoors and offsite, adhere to the social distancing guidance and outdoor social gathering limits for venues occurring outdoors, and must adhere to social distancing and not more than 250 people within each outdoor area. So they took out a lot of this information from our worship one now. But it's important that if you do have outdoor worship, that you keep the social distancing, the 6 feet away from each household, the communion and offering and all of those things still are in place, even outdoors, as if you were indoors. So there isn't good outdoor, and I'm going to keep looking and working, and I'm going to try to find some good guidance. But if you are planning on having an outdoor service, you still need to have social distancing. You still need to have people wear masks. You still like do communion, social distance wise, all of those things. And I'll keep working and looking at good guidance for you all.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I think so, I'm more optimistic, and I find the possibility of gathering outdoors more promising, as once again, as long as you're careful and you think through things like choke points, like where is a space where people are going to come close to each other, and how do we mitigate that? What about restrooms? Will we allow people in the building? And if so, how will we handle that? But you think through those things, I think it's very possible to do safe outdoor worship safely, um, especially with social distancing. Yes, and these are on the COVID-19 resource page. So what's next, Chris?
Our next thing is to take our first poll. We have
Yay.
3 separate polls. So our first poll is open now. So it's, are you planning on gathering in person? Indoor at up to 50%, outdoor with up to 250 people, drive-in style in car. We're gonna wait till everyone can participate, and we aren't sure yet. Do you have a SMART team? Yes, no, or we're gonna have one, we just haven't met yet. You have the volunteers lined up to make meeting in person happen, cleaning and ushers and guides. And then for a fun one, I put in, what superpower would you choose to have? Because lately, I think with Bishop Bill's devotion, I think that I would like, I know God gives me strength for every day, but sometimes an extra superpower would be a little helpful. I should have put it as a superpower, being able to dig through guidance easily. And yes, Jesse, I see your comment. Are you sharing these documents on the resource page? Most of them are actually already on there, but I will just double check to make sure that the links are accurate, since things have changed a little bit.
This is Todd Schneeberger from Peace Lutheran in Barrett. Could we get a sense of what people are doing? You know, are people opening, or, you know, kind of get an idea of where congregations are at?
That's what we're doing right now, Todd, with the poll. It's kind of the, at least with this audience of 60 some. So we'll see what the results are. Is everybody able to participate? Okay. Do you have results, Chris? Oh, you're
76% have voted as of right now. So 47 of the 60.
okay.
Right now, we have 60% are not sure yet. 4% is indoor. So 2 people have said that they're gonna meet indoors. 2 people have said outdoors. 10 people drive-in style in cars. 8 people have said we're gonna wait till everyone can participate, and 28 people have said they're not sure. We aren't sure yet. As for SMART teams, 15 people have said yes, 11 have said no, 21 have said we're going to have one, we just haven't met yet. And volunteers lined up, 5 people have said yes, 17 no, 25 not quite yet. And so far, superpowers, the highest is time bending, time freezing. I would like speed up 2020 if I had that power. And then mind control and telepathy. No one has picked X-ray vision. I would personally choose teleportation, so I could just get to places without having to do the in-between thing. So I will end this poll, and you can see that. not to put people on the spot, but Bishop Bill, do you want to hear from any of the people who are doing the indoor, outdoor drive-in style?
If they would like to share, that's fine. They don't have to. You don't have to call them out. But if anybody wants to share their plan, that'd be great.
This is Todd down in Barrett again. What we're doing is we're going to start with once a month having an outdoor option with lawn seating and or cars. So we'll have an FM transmitter so people can stay in their cars if they're so inclined.
Yep.
And we're a
Sounds like-
small congregation, so if we get 50 people, that will be the max that we probably would see at a congregational service. We're going to continue to do our online stuff the way we've been doing it. So the people that do stay home don't feel left out or unsupported, so to speak. And our team is putting together plans we're starting to put together plans for funerals, weddings, etc., if necessary, what that might look like and the usher thing. And so we're just kind of getting started in that process, but.
Good. It sounds like you're going about it in a thoughtful way, in a measured way, and I think that's exactly the right way to do it.
And this is Gene from First Lutheran in Carlsbad. I could almost mirror what Todd said. We're going to be doing a drive-in style service yet this month, hopefully. And also we're going to do a drive-by communion. We've ordered the wine and the host together in a package that you can
Yep.
peel off. Thank you. So we're going to offer that probably the last Sunday of June. But actually, at our last council meeting, we're really not looking to get back into full worship until probably September.
Mhm.
We're going to be rushing anything before that.
That's the phenomenon that we see a lot, is that there's voices that are applying pressure and expressing a strong desire to return to worship, but then when you actually check that out with the wider community, the majority of people are reluctant to gather in that way. Also, the polling numbers of Americans in general bear that out. Now, when you see them out and about at L&M Supply or something like that, maybe looks like a strong majority that are all for being out there without their masks on. But oh well. I get it. This is just a hard time for everyone, and it's hard to sustain. Anything else? Anybody else that wants to share?
Laurel at Augustine and Fergus Falls, we're doing basically the same thing. We've committed with 2 other churches in town to stay in our current format through the end of July, mostly because we have a radio spot that way, and that allows us to do the communion, which our council felt was very important. But some of the feedback I'm getting, I'm mostly getting the things about the WELCA and the small events, the people that want access to those things. And then the other feedback I'm getting is the ELCA the only denomination that's not encouraging their churches to open? And it's hard when we're in the town of Fergus and have so many churches, and the 5 ELCA ones seem to be the only ones that aren't meeting in person. So that seems to be the feedback we're getting.
Yeah, the full communion partners, that document that I just shared, that's a document, that's an ecumenical document that's all the full communion partners. So, and we don't have very many full communion partners, but most of the Presbyterians and the Episcopalians, this is the guidance they're being offered. Now, whether the congregations are following the guidance or choosing to follow it is another matter. Because none of our denominations have a strong authoritative polity like the Catholic Church does. But I know that the more conservative and some of the evangelical denominations or the non-denoms are pretty much all in with returning to worship. And I also am aware that they're also not following any of not all of, I don't want to paint a broad brush, but there are widespread reports of congregations gathering and they're just gathering like they always do and worshiping in the way they always have, which I think is very dangerous. What's next, Chris?
Hi, I'm going to share my second poll. Let's see if I can do this. There we go. That's where I do it. Okay. Given what's going on in our country, and it started in our state, this change with George Floyd, and it's a worldwide event. We, as a Synod staff, have been talking about racial justice and what we should and shouldn't do as a Synod, and resources that would be helpful. And so, will you do anything on racial justice in your congregation? And the questions are yes, no, not sure, I would, but I need good resources, or I would, but I'm nervous.
Thanks, Chris. While you're doing that, I'll just comment. I mean, there's a new urgency for this, but as I shared in my opening comments, it's not a new problem. It's just coming, we're just facing it in a new way, or becoming aware of it in a new way. And with a fresh sense of urgency because of the horrific murder that occurred in the streets of Minneapolis. And it was reminiscent of other acts of violence that were committed against people of color recently. And it probably should have been at the top of our agenda as a Synod from the very beginning, but it wasn't. And part of that is the fact that we have the luxury of ignoring the issue because of our large, the vast majority of our people in the Synod and of this region are white. Probably the next largest population of diversity is more around with our native neighbors, obviously, and some areas where there's some immigration, people working in mostly food packaging and agriculture. So we can pretend as the white majority that it's not an issue here and then it doesn't need to be, that we don't need to address it. But that's actually that insidious sort of way of perpetrating and continuing to allow racial inequity to continue in our society. So I do think, as your bishop, that we have to find ways to address it. And I'm just here saying I don't know how that is right now. And I'm wondering what you're thinking, what you're intending. We're going to be looking at this and researching it and offering a beginning. What I do know, what I've heard from my colleagues of color and from African-American pastors and colleagues around the church, that they're just tired and don't feel like they should have to carry the water on this, that it's really something that white people have to address. And that's when real change happens. So I want to find a way to do that doesn't put the burden on the few people of color that we do have serving or leading in our congregations. I'm sorry to hear about the breaking up. I wasn't aware that was happening, but yeah, it's that time of year, perhaps.
So for the people who can't see the poll results, 54% said not sure. And then the next is I would, but I would need good resources.
Okay.
And so we will continue to work on this. And it is something that I got a message from someone that said, in addition to the African American and Native populations, including the Latino population, especially with the agriculture that we have in our Synod as well.
Correct. So there's a question out there about how you're going about reaching people that aren't on social media. I know that we've talked before about people making use of the good old telephone, and using phone trees and other ways of connecting with people that aren't adept at social media or aren't on it. Any other ideas out there for ways that you're connecting to the people who they're probably feeling incredibly isolated? I think of my own mother, who she does know how to do Facebook on her phone, but not super adept. And that's can be a population that maybe is feeling more isolated than ever. Any ideas out there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Liz Hardwick and I'm from Zion in Moore Road. And Jeff Galley, our council president, wasn't able to be on tonight. So I'm the vice chair, so I'm taking his place.
Good, welcome.
But thank you. But I'm glad you asked this question because we discussed this at our last council meeting. So just last week, the SMART team got together with a few others and divided up the rostered members between all of us council members, and we are making calls, just check-in calls to see how everyone's doing. Just, hi, this is Liz. I'm on the church council calling from Zion. Just how are you doing? Are you able to talk to your family? Do you have anything that you need? Do you need us to go get you groceries, or do you have any health issues? And just kind of a nice check-in call. And it's really, really been good. And I know
Good.
Our congregation has a lot of elderly people, and I was concerned about them. So this has been a really, really good way to connect. And
Basically a good old wellness check.
Yes. Yep.
Yep. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
All right, what's next, Chris?
I have a third poll, and now I know how to switch between polls. So I try to learn something every day, and today I've hit my limit on things I've learned. But the next one is up. It's this past Sunday, the Synod offered an entire worship service. Did your congregation use it? Yes. It was great, yes, but probably wouldn't use it again. The third one is I didn't know it was offered. The fourth one is no, we did our own thing. Or no, we don't have online or radio worship, so it wasn't useful for us. And then the second question and last question of the night is how often should we meet, meaning the council presidents, and the options are continue to meet once a week. It'd be okay to move to every other week unless something big happens. It'd be okay to move to every other week. And then I don't think I need to attend these meetings anymore.
Deanna is just sharing about the use of the United States Postal Service, which is a ancient technology that works really well in connecting people.
This is Jill from Battle Lake First Lutheran, and I was wondering if either Chris or Bishop, if you know something about Red River Worship and how they can help with online services. I think that's a great resource, and maybe some of the other churches would like to know more about that. We're going to discuss it at our council meeting tomorrow night using their music, and because that's what we're finding, our congregation is missing music in the online services. And
They did our service
offer more?
They did our service for us, and we're actually incubating Red River Leadership, which is an offshoot of Red River Worship, which is exactly that, a way of consulting with congregations and providing some of the resources. Like they did all the editing for us and brought it all together and made all the transitions seamless and made it look really, I think, pretty professional, and then offered the music, which was, there was some cost involved, but I think there are many places that may find it's well worth it. And I think they also are looking at some kind of a subscription service. I think we have a link on our webpage to Red River Leadership, and they're eager to be of assistance. They also have full-time day jobs, so it might take a day or two for them to get back to you, but I know they would love to work with you. We are actually pivoting too as a staff from being sort of all COVID-19 all the time to more how do we live in this mode? And so we're planning to do a webinar, which is not just for rostered leaders, but for all leaders on worship and best practices. And I believe Red River Worship will be a key leader in that. And we're also going to do a webinar coming up soon, working with Luther Seminary on pastoral care in the era of COVID-19.
Yes, so the results from the poll, most people said yes, it was great. We are thinking about doing one in about 6 weeks. We said the roster leaders have said that, so we will begin working on that one to see if there is good use for that. And then for the how often we should meet, 55% said it would be okay to move to every other week unless something big happens. And then the other two were, it was split between meeting once a week and meeting every other week.
Okay.
Can I ask a question that might be off target, Laurel at Augustana? The communion to go that's packaged with the host in with it, I know that that is a more costly option from my worship team members that have told me that. Does anyone have a resource for that in bulk that would be the best pricing? Because I know many times that's only used in like visitation scenarios instead of buying multiple hundred at a time. Or is that something that maybe, Chris, you would have some, I don't know if there's a partner that works with the ELCA on those kind of things that would give us the best pricing?
I know that Melberg's in Moorhead has it. I was gonna start looking up to see if it's on their website, but they do deliver to the entire synod using CD delivery. So look.
Another simple way, like if you're doing a drive-through worship, you could have people bring their own elements from home.
I know, this is Laura from Zion. We announced last Sunday that we would be doing a full communion service online on our broadcast, and we announced it ahead of time so people could prepare to have wine and bread, you know, so they could partake in the communion, whether from a family member or someone else that they're worshiping with. But that is a big part of worship that people are, including myself, they're really missing that. So that was the best we come up with right now. We'll see how it goes and the feedback from it, but to avoid the cost to the church, you know, we felt that was the best way to go and to get it done kind of quickly.
Now, if you get stopped on the way to church with a gallon of moonshine in the back seat, I don't think you can use the church as an excuse for that one. But if it's just a little, you could try. But if it's just a little flask of wine, I think you can probably get away with that.
You better have the wafers with it, though.
Yeah, you better have at least some crackers or something.
So on the Melberg's website, they have on a box of 500 is $98.99. A box of 250 is $58.99. So
thank you. That's helpful. That's a lot more reasonable than some of the other online brokers.
Okay. Yeah. So Melberg's is right here in Moorhead. We partner with them at Synod Assembly and at the Fall Theological Retreat. And they do deliver across our entire synod. So Melberg's, MELBERG, Christian book, and Google that in Moorhead. Yeah.
I think there was another
Gene at
question.
First Lutheran in Carlsbad, and our pastor ordered the 500, figuring that we were going to be out probably for the next 3 months or so. And we have in the past, since this thing started, we've had the at-home communion, like was Laura mentioned, where we told people to have, you know, wine or grape juice and bread And we've done it with the service. We've done that every month. And we will continue to do that if the weather isn't conducive to having when we're going to have our drive-by communions.
Thank you for sharing that.
If
Coming
people
to-
are planning funerals for outside, we have a large funeral coming up in August for a teacher here in Fergus. And if we have inclement weather, how do you, we'll have people coming from, I mean, children from all over the country actually coming. How do you present, should we offer our building as a backup plan under the guidelines, or how would you suggest that people that are planning outdoor special services have a backup plan for weather, weddings or funerals?
I just had this issue come up with speaking with John Anderson, the bishop in southwestern Minnesota, and he was at just this last Sunday at an event that was intended to be an outdoor congregational 100th anniversary or something like that, and they had to move it inside, and they had thought it through. They had a plan. He felt like they did it safely. People were masked and there was proper social distancing. Some people chose not to go in. But I think, you have to be realistic. If you can't just say cancel a funeral. So but then you want to have, I think it's essential that you have a backup plan. And also let people know that there is a backup plan, and that if they're uncomfortable coming in, that they're blessing not to. So I also want you to know that if you have special events or services that you're trying to celebrate, either with outdoor worship or drive-through or online, I can be available to you. I'm not trying to sell myself or anything like that, but I'm not preaching every single Sunday, and so I can be available as a preacher from time to time. I will continue to do recorded messages on a mostly weekly basis, and also a sermon at least once every 6 weeks for use by the whole synod. Anything else, Chris, or did we cover it?
That's our agenda.
We were worried we wouldn't be able to fill an hour, but well, thank you for your leadership once again. I can't tell you how grateful I am for you and your continued leadership in this interesting time that we're living in together. Pastor Carla, I'm going to ask you to pray us out.
Sure. Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we thank you for your steadfast and abiding presence. We ask that you be with all of these leaders and all of our congregations and members, that you help them through these days of discernment and next steps, and that we can worship you with great joy without any of the barriers of fear. We ask that you give us good planning, give us good resources, and continue to hold us together by the power of your Holy Spirit. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everybody.